done for. Everyone get out.
Greetings sailors, welcome to World of Warships, and we've got a viewer replay for you today courtesy of Zdrack, and he's going to be driving the Kuma, the tier 4 even, Japanese cruiser. It's not very well armoured, but neither is the Phoenix, and it, over the Phoenix, has much better torpedoes, although the Phoenix has probably got a better rate of fire or better range on its guns or something, or better speed. But the Kuma's no slouch in any of those departments either, and I quite enjoyed playing through it to get to the Furataka. Now this is actually the last of the fast firing cruisers that the Japanese get at the mid tiers, because once you get to the Furataka you have a big upgrade in your guns. You go up to 203 inch guns. That would be impressive. 203mm guns. And you lose a lot of your rate of fire, although it was considerably buffed in the 4.11 patch. And it's a lot more pleasant to use these days, the Furataka. The other big buff it got was to turret traverse speed, but that's not something you really have to worry about too much in the Kuma. And as you can see, you've got a very nice spread of guns. In fact, you can get all but one gun on the enemy at any given time, so that's rather a nice layout. So as to what's happening right now, well, that Clemson has screwed up a bit, hasn't he? He overcommitted, and if Zdrack had been here on his own, well, he still probably would have been fine. But he's also got 3 friendly destroyers with him, and one of them fired torps, forcing that Clemson to beach himself. And now he's completely stuffed. So I would say that was a bit of a screw up on the part of that Clemson, because he way overcommitted and just got completely spanked for it. However, Zdrack is now possibly in a not great position because he doesn't have a lot of room to maneuver here. Now fortunately, the other enemy destroyers aren't in this corner, which is unusual. It's where you tend to see the destroyers on this this particular map, although not always, obviously. But fortunately for him, well, he can safely make this turn and be shielded by that headland to his north. And so, although this is not ideal, he's having to make a very slow turn here to avoid running aground himself. He's fairly safe in doing it, because even if there were multiple ships piling around that corner all at once, well, they'd have multiple things to shoot at. He's not alone here at all. Talking of piling around the corner, well, it's not really piling so much as slowly chugging. The Wyoming pulls into view, and he's already let go some torpedoes, as have some of his destroyers, and one of those hits home, so that's that guy in a bit of trouble. And he's burning as well, so possibly he's also flooding at the same time, because he hasn't been able to... if he hasn't put the fire out, then he's almost certainly flooding alongside the flames. There's also a rather unwary St. Louis, and yeah, this is a nice kind of double hit here. He gets 3 torpedoes into 2 ships for rather a lot of damage. That Wyoming is now well and truly boned, as we can see. The St. Louis at this point should just turn around and try and make a getaway, but again, he has, even though he knows there are superior forces here, he's committed himself to this this little pocket with all the islands and the narrower passageways. So he's doomed as well at this point. That was a bit of a tactical mistake, going into this kind of area when you know there are superior numbers, and especially if you're in a rather lumbering ship like the St. Louis versus multiple destroyers, well, yeah. Now he's not going down without a fight. He's actually about to kill our St. Louis that was here, but he's not looking too healthy himself, and that is a whole lot of torpedoes going for him. But there's also a whole lot of torpedoes coming this way from that enemy Wicks. So it's actually forced Zdrack to turn side on to that St. Louis, which was not ideal, but it was only effectively for a few seconds because, of course, those torpedoes were already in the water. That guy was already dead, he just didn't know it yet. Although he probably did know it, actually. So there's only really a Kuma around the corner, or around the headland I should say really. They've got a Wix that's going for their cap, and the enemy team, although we're not that far off in numbers, it's 6-4, they're in real disarray it seems like. They're very much on the back foot, they are being pressed. That doesn't necessarily mean that they are down and out, however, because sometimes you can get this kind of situation, and it can occur in World of Tanks as well, where overconfidence leads a team to press a bit too hard or a bit too injudiciously against an enemy that they think is on the ropes. And suddenly that enemy turns around and starts slugging back all the harder, and it can be a very nasty surprise when that happens. And sometimes you get what you think is going to be an easy win turning into a much more drawn out fight, or even potentially a loss. Now there are carriers on each side, although actually there was only one carrier, come to think of it, and it was on the enemy side. You can tell this was before the matchmaking changes were introduced. And Zdrack launched his fighter at exactly the right time and was able to disrupt that drop very nicely, so he didn't really have to worry there. In fact, it seems like some of those actually effectively dropped on the land because only 2 torpedoes went in the water there. So that was a very nicely timed use of the carrier-launched fighter. Carrier-launched? Catapult-launched. Word that starts with a C. So he really didn't have anything to worry about there. He's also got the hydroacoustic search, but I don't think he actually uses it at any point on this in this match. But most of the time, there isn't really much point to using it. I've only found it useful on a handful of occasions myself. So the enemy carrier has been spotted. That Kuma is retreating further around the corner with an Isakaze going for him, but the Isakaze actually is he's playing a dangerous game there, because he's purely relying on his torpedoes to get that enemy Kuma, but the enemy Kuma is pretty maneuverable and has torpedoes itself and much better guns. Also more hit points, so you know there's that. And if he knows what he's doing, he'll just be spamming HE at that Isakaze, and if the Isakaze isn't careful, he's just going to die very, very quickly. So that might be another case where going in, despite... in this case, it wasn't a numerical disadvantage, it was a class disadvantage, a cruiser versus a destroyer at very close range. Unless the destroyer gets pretty lucky or the cruiser's distracted by something else. Yeah, it didn't go well for Isakaze, and generally it won't go well if a cruiser is able to anticipate you coming and just use the full rate of their firepower, because as you can see, the Kuma has got a pretty nice rate of fire. So that South Carolina looks like he's coming back to try and defend their cap, but he's fairly low health himself now. And despite the enemy team, I think in theory having greater numbers in the north, it hasn't really seemed to matter. And yes, there's that Kuma, he's still there. Now Zdrack refrains from dropping his torpedoes because it would probably kill that Wakatake, but yeah, it doesn't matter. However, he times his own drop perfectly, and this other guy isn't firing AP, but neither is Zdrack. And actually, AP may have been the preferable ammo to use, but he does at various times use, switch between HE and AP. And, yeah, that's the carrier drop torp, so he's probably going to avoid those. He does at various times do it, but he didn't there, and it wasn't strictly necessary. I mean, he managed to get most of the damage done with those torpedoes, but he possibly could have taken less damage himself because he's now on rather low health. So it looks like that Hosho is having another go at him. The Hosho, even though it's only tier 4, gets 3 groups of planes to play with, but his plane, his own fighter planes just come back, so he gets it out. Unfortunately not in time to disrupt the drop, but he's able to easily avoid it because that was, I think, an automatic drop rather than a manual drop. And you don't see a lot of people doing the manual drops at the lower tiers. And one of the reasons why carriers, well-driven carriers anyway, are especially powerful at the higher tiers is because by that point, people have generally mastered how to do manual drops, and manual drops are absolutely devastating. There's very, very little you can do, especially in a battleship, to avoid a broadside dropped manual spread of torps. So yeah, he's probably not going to have much of a problem with avoiding the enemy torpedoes, but all the same, he's trying to set this carrier on fire, and I think that the use of HE was rather deliberate here. Now, he just got himself a Confederate medal, which is rather nice. There's only this carrier and a St. Louis left, and actually that St. Louis is going to go down swinging pretty hard. He's not going to give in without a fight. Meanwhile, Zdrack, well, he's going to struggle to get this kill because the Wakatake is actually closing in as well, and has already dropped one lot of torps, so he's probably got a good chance here. And at this point, there we go. That's why AP at other cruisers and carriers can be quite a nice idea, because you can get, with Citadels, a lot of damage very quickly. And if you get a spread of AP shells with multiple Citadels from single salvo, then salvo volley, then it really can add up. So there we go, that St. Louis just took out one of the remaining battleships, and I actually find it quite amusing that he kind of finished off the carrier. It was actually with torpedoes, but he got a last second Citadel at the same time, so yeah, that carrier really felt a lot of hurt very quickly. And still on the AP here, and maybe he should have gone back to HE, because the St. Louis as a protected cruiser does actually have a decent amount of armour. And there we go, he does actually go back to HE. So just before he dies, the carrier was able to get his one of his torp squadrons out and do a whole Shakespearean "from hell's heart I stab at thee" style thing, and have a go at getting Zdrack from beyond the grave, but it was not to be. Zdrack, meanwhile, took out that last St. Louis rather nicely and finished the match in quite fine style. So that was rather hectic, really. I mean, that was a fairly large amount of action in not that great an amount of time, because the pace of battle in World of Warships can be very uneven sometimes, but in this case it was pretty much just action from start to finish. And as you can see there, Zdrack easily at the top of the team, 1800 base XP. That's got to be what, close to 100,000 damage. I can't do the sums in my head. Numbers go away, you're scary. But either way, it was a fair whack of damage, and he got a fair whack of XP for that, and was rewarded rather nicely, as you can see. So yeah, I actually really quite like the Japanese cruiser line. I think if you're interested in cruisers with AA capability, at least at the kind of mid-tiers, the Americans are probably better, but the Japanese, I think they have a little bit more versatility with the better torpedo armament. Although, of course, I think it's just, I mean, the top tiers are both very, very capable machines from what I understand. I mean, the Des Moines is very popular, and I think the Zhao is quite scary in the right hands, but I think the reason why I'm doing the Japanese cruisers now as a preference over the American ones is just because I concentrated on the American cruisers in closed beta. So, you know, it's a change, basically. So before I wrap this up, I will point out that we're going from closed, not even closed beta to open beta, wow, that happened already, from open beta to release, and that is happening in just a few days' time. So I'm going to say, if you like World of Warships and if you like free stuff, keep your eyes peeled to my channel, keep your eyes peeled to Circon's channel and Twitch stream, and I know there are a couple of other people that are doing things for the release as well. And I'm going to guess it's not even just EU people. I would be very surprised if it wasn't also people on the NA server and people on the SEA server and other community contributors from around the place. So, all that said, if you enjoyed this video, you can hit the like button, you can leave any comments below, you can subscribe to my channel, and as always, stay tuned for more.